The massive research vessel Starseeker drifted slowly through the asteroid belt, its powerful sensors scanning the ancient rocks that floated endlessly in the void. Professor Reed stood at the main observation deck, his four eyes narrowed as he studied the readings. Something wasn't right about this region of space. "Professor, you might want to see this," called out his assistant from the scanning station. "We're picking up some unusual metal concentrations." Reed moved across the deck, his tall, slender frame towering over the crew of mixed species. He had spent 30 years studying ancient space artifacts, but these readings made his antenna twitch with excitement. "Magnify Sector 7, he ordered, and a holographic display zoomed in on a particularly dense cluster of asteroids. As the images cleared, the entire bridge crew fell silent. Hidden among the rocks, partially covered by centuries of space dust, was a ship. Not just any ship. It was massive, at least 5 kilometers long. As they watched, more shapes became visible. 2 ships, then 5, then dozens. "By the ancient stars," whispered Reed, "we've found a fleet." The discovery sent waves of excitement through the scientific community. Within days, more research vessels arrived. They found not dozens, but hundreds of ships, all perfectly preserved in the vacuum of space. The ships appeared primitive by modern standards. Their hulls were thick and ungainly, their weapon systems obvious and outdated, their engines massive and inefficient. "Look at these power systems," laughed Dr. Green, one of the leading engineers from the Centauri Alliance. "They're using physical matter/antimatter reactions. How wasteful. We haven't needed those since we discovered quantum fold technology." Reed watched as his colleagues mockingly catalogued the fleet's primitive technology. But something bothered him. The ships were old. Preliminary scans suggested they were over 10,000 years old, yet they showed almost no damage from their time in space. "These readings don't make sense," he muttered, studying his personal scanner. The metal of the hulls showed signs of advanced molecular bonding that shouldn't have been possible with primitive technology. The power cores, while seemingly simple, contained elements that didn't match any known period of technological development. "Sir," called one of his junior researchers, "we've managed to access one of the smaller ships. You need to see this." Reed followed the researcher to a shuttle, and they made their way to one of the derelict vessels. As they passed through the airlock, Reed noticed something odd. The artificial gravity engaged automatically, despite the ship being powered down for millennia. Inside, the ship was dark and cold, but surprisingly clean. No dust, no debris, as if the ship had been sealed in a perfect time capsule. Their lights revealed corridors that seemed unnecessarily wide and tall, with strange markings on the walls that didn't match any known language. "The bridge should be this way," said the researcher, consulting his map. As they walked, Reed's scanner kept showing the anomalous readings. The walls contained layers of technology that seemed to be dormant but still functional. When they reached the bridge, Reed stopped in his tracks. The command center was huge, with stations that seemed designed for beings much larger than any known spacefaring species. At the center was a captain's chair, weathered but intact. "Start recording," Reed said quietly. "I don't think these ships are as primitive as everyone thinks. Look at the design. Everything is overbuilt, oversized. It's like they were made to last forever." As he approached the captain's chair, something happened. A soft blue light began to pulse through the floor lines, and a quiet hum filled the air. Reed's scanner went crazy, showing power readings that shouldn't have been possible. "Professor," his researcher called out nervously, "I think we should leave." But Reed couldn't move. He stood transfixed as more systems began to wake up around them. The wall panels started to glow, and holographic displays flickered to life, showing symbols and data in that strange, unknown language. "No," Reed whispered, his scientific mind racing with possibilities. "We're not leaving. We just found something impossible. A fleet that's been waiting out here for 10,000 years. And it's still working." He looked around the bridge with growing excitement and a touch of fear. The question is, who built it? And why did they leave it here? Little did Reed know, he had just stumbled upon one of humanity's greatest secrets, and his discovery would soon shake the foundations of galactic civilization. 3 weeks after the initial discovery, the asteroid field had become a hub of scientific activity. Research ships from every major species crowded the area, each trying to unlock the mysteries of the ancient fleet. But instead of answers, they found only more questions. Professor Reed sat in his makeshift office aboard the Starseeker, surrounded by holographic displays showing test results. Nothing made sense. The metal used in the ship's construction was unlike anything in their database, yet it appeared to be made using basic manufacturing techniques. More results from Bay 12, Professor, said his assistant, adding another data crystal to the pile on his desk. The engineering team tried to date the power cores again. Same problem. The readings keep jumping between 8,000 and 12,000 years old. Reed rubbed his tired eyes. What about the computer systems? That's the strangest part. They're built using crystal matrices, but not like anything we use today. Our best tech experts say the design is, well, they say it's elegant, simple but incredibly efficient. A loud argument from the corridor interrupted them. 2 researchers from different species were shouting at each other, waving data pads. "It's impossible," shouted one, his scales flaring red with anger. No civilization could build ships this size without leaving any historical record. Then explain the evidence. The other shot back. These ships were clearly built by someone. Reed stepped into the corridor. "Gentlemen, please, what's the problem?" The scaled researcher, Dr. Varl, turned to Reed. "We've checked every historical database, every archaeological record. No known civilization was capable of building a fleet this size 10,000 years ago. The resources required would have been enormous. There would be evidence, mining operations, construction facilities, something." "Maybe we're looking in the wrong place," Reed suggested. "What if they weren't built here?" "That's even more impossible," the other researcher scoffed. "You can't move a fleet this size between galaxies without leaving some trace." Back in his office, Reed pulled up the latest scans. The ships were massive, yes, but there was something odd about their design. Every part seemed to serve multiple purposes. The thick hull plates that everyone had laughed at. They contained layers of technology that seemed to be dormant. The oversized engines weren't just for propulsion. They housed some kind of energy matrix that their scanners couldn't penetrate. "Play back the bridge recording," he ordered his computer. The hologram showed the moment when the systems had started activating. Reed watched it frame by frame, looking for something he might have missed. There, just before the lights came on, a symbol had flashed briefly on one of the screens. He zoomed in, enhanced the image. "Computer, run this symbol through the xenolinguistics database. No match found in known languages," the computer replied. However, similar patterns detected in ancient ruins on Earth, circa 20,000 BCE. Reed sat up straight. Earth, the human homeworld. That couldn't be right. Humans had only achieved spaceflight 1,000 years ago. They were newcomers to the galactic community. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. Dr. Blake, one of the few human researchers on the project, stood there looking excited. "Professor, we found something in Ship 17. You need to see this." They took a shuttle to the massive vessel. Inside, Blake led Reed to what appeared to be a medical bay. The room was filled with stasis pods, each large enough to hold a being twice the size of any known species. "Look at this," Blake said, pointing to markings next to one of the pods. "At first we thought it was just decoration, but it's not. It's DNA. DNA, from what species?" Blake's hands trembled slightly as she pulled up a holographic comparison. "It's human DNA, but it's different, more complex than modern human DNA. Like it's been enhanced somehow." Reed stared at the display, his mind racing. Human DNA in ships that were thousands of years older than human spaceflight, the oversized corridors and control stations, the simple yet advanced technology, the missing historical records. Dr. Blake, he said slowly, I think we need to recheck every assumption we've made about these ships and about human history. As they stood there, surrounded by the silent machines of an impossible past, neither of them noticed the small light that had started blinking on one of the stasis pods. Deep within the ancient ship, something was beginning to wake up. News of Dr. Blake's discovery spread through the research fleet like wildfire. Within hours, every major scientific vessel had received word that human DNA had been found in the ancient ships. Most responded with disbelief and mockery. Impossible, declared the chief scientist of the Galactic Science Council during an emergency meeting. Humans were still using wooden boats when these ships were built. They hadn't even discovered electricity. Dr. Blake stood alone before the council, her data displayed on the massive screen behind her. The chamber was filled with representatives from 20 different species, all staring at her with various expressions of doubt and amusement. The evidence is clear, she said firmly. We found human DNA markers in every command center we've examined. Not just traces, they're deliberately encoded into the ship's systems. Then your testing methods must be flawed, sneered one of the council members. Perhaps you're seeing what you want to see, being human yourself. Professor Reed stepped forward from the audience. I supervised the testing personally. 3 different labs have confirmed the results. The DNA patterns are human, but they're more advanced than modern human DNA. The room erupted in argument. Reed watched as Blake stood her ground, her face calm despite the ridicule. He admired her courage. It wasn't easy being the only human scientist in a room full of skeptics. Back on Ship 17, Blake and Reed continued their investigation. The ship seemed different now, more active. More systems were coming online each day, though they still couldn't access the main computer. Look at this, Blake said, pointing to a new holographic display. These aren't just random DNA patterns. They're keys. Reed studied the display. The DNA sequences were arranged in specific patterns, like a complex lock waiting for the right combination. Computer, Blake called out, run genetic comparison between this sequence and my DNA. The ship's systems hummed. Suddenly, a new hologram appeared, a double helix spinning in the air, sections highlighted in bright blue. Partial match detected, announced a deep voice that made them both jump. Genetic lineage confirmed. Security clearance level 2 granted. Reed and Blake stared at each other. The ship had spoken, in perfect galactic standard. How long have you been able to talk? Reed asked the ship. Full systems activation requires command authority, the ship replied. Current genetic match allows limited interaction. Blake stepped forward. Who built you? When? Access to historical data requires command authority. Current clearance insufficient. Reed's antenna twitched with excitement. But you recognize Dr. Blake's DNA. That means humans must have built you. Statement contains partial accuracy. The ship responded. Further details restricted. More displays activated around them, showing star charts and technical readouts. The information was overwhelming. Glimpses of technology far beyond their current understanding. Professor, called a voice from the corridor. One of their junior researchers rushed in. Something's happening on the other ships. They're all powering up. Through the viewports, they could see lights flickering to life across the fleet. Hundreds of ships, awakening from their ancient slumber. Warning, the ship's voice announced. Stage 1 activation sequence initiated. All personnel please clear command centers. What's happening? Blake asked. The fleet awakens, replied the ship. As was intended. Alarms began blaring throughout the research vessels. The ancient ships were generating massive energy readings, their supposedly primitive systems showing power levels that dwarfed modern technology. In the council chamber, the emergency meeting dissolved into chaos as reports flooded in. The ships they had mocked as relics were coming to life, revealing technology that shouldn't have been possible. Dr. Blake, the ship's voice had changed, becoming more urgent. Your genetic line is recognized. Would you like to receive the message? What message? The message left by your ancestors, the builders of this fleet, the ones who saw what was coming and prepared for it. Blake looked at Reed, then back at the holographic display. Yes, she said. Show me. The ship's lights dimmed, and a new hologram appeared. A human figure, dressed in a uniform unlike anything they had ever seen. As it began to speak, Blake realized they were about to learn the truth about humanity's hidden past and why they had built this mysterious fleet. The hologram flickered to life, showing a tall human man wearing a dark uniform with strange symbols. His face was tired but determined. Dr. Blake and Professor Reed stood transfixed as he began to speak. To those who have awakened this fleet, I am Admiral James Wright of the First Human Empire. If you're seeing this message, it means two things. You carry our genetic markers, and the time of return is near. Blake felt her hands shake. The First Human Empire. There was no such thing in any historical record. The hologram continued. What I'm about to tell you will seem impossible. 10,000 years ago, humanity reached the stars. We built an empire spanning thousands of systems, but we also discovered something terrible. Suddenly, alarms blared through the ship. The hologram flickered and disappeared. Priority alert, the ship's AI announced. Long-range sensors detecting quantum disturbance at the galaxy's edge. Awakening sequence accelerated. Through the viewport, they watched in awe as the entire fleet began to transform. The thick, clunky hull plates shifted and moved, revealing sleek, advanced technology beneath. What had appeared to be primitive weapon systems reconfigured themselves into arrays of energy weapons unlike anything modern science had achieved. Professor, called a voice over the comm. The Galactic Council is demanding answers. The fleet's power signature is off the charts. Reed clicked his communicator. Tell them to clear the area. We don't know what's about to happen. On the bridge, more systems activated. Holographic displays filled the air, showing star maps and tactical data. The ship's lights pulsed with increasing intensity. Dr. Blake, the ship's AI said, command protocols require human authorization for full activation. Do you accept command? Blake looked at Reed, who nodded encouragingly. I accept. The bridge transformed around them. The oversized command chair adjusted its size, and new control interfaces appeared. The ship's systems recognized Blake's DNA, creating a perfect interface for human use. Full historical archive now available. The AI announced. Resuming message playback. Admiral Wright's hologram reappeared. We discovered they were coming. A force from beyond our galaxy, ancient and unstoppable. They appear every 10,000 years to harvest advanced civilizations. We fought them, but their technology was beyond anything we had ever seen. The hologram showed images of a terrible war. Strange, crystalline ships battling against human vessels. Entire worlds falling to the unknown enemy. We couldn't beat them conventionally, Wright continued. So we made a choice. We built this fleet, ships that could evolve and improve themselves over thousands of years. We seeded primitive worlds with human colonies, erased our history, and hid our true technology. We became our own backup plan. Blake and Reed watched as more of the fleet's true nature was revealed. The ships weren't just warships. They were self-evolving technological marvels. For 10,000 years, they had been thinking, learning, and improving themselves while appearing dormant. The ship designs contained no wasted space, Reed realized. Everything we thought was primitive was just a disguise. The AI interrupted. Warning. Quantum disturbance growing. Enemy fleet emergence predicted within 72 hours. They're coming back, Blake whispered, just like the message said. Across the fleet, more ships awakened. What had appeared to be a graveyard of ancient vessels was transforming into the most advanced armada ever seen. Modern sensors could barely understand what they were detecting. The Galactic Council ships backed away in awe as the fleet's true form was revealed. The vessels were now sleek, their hull plates transformed into living metal that rippled with energy. Weapon systems beyond current understanding emerged from hidden compartments. Final activation sequence complete. The AI announced, "All ships combat ready. Awaiting orders, Commander Blake." Blake stood at the command center of humanity's greatest secret, a fleet built by her ancestors, hidden in plain sight, waiting for this moment. The mockery and disbelief of the galactic community had turned to stunned silence. "Professor," she said to Reed, "I think it's time to tell the Council the truth about humanity's past and about what's coming." As if in response, the long-range sensors lit up with new warnings. Something vast and ancient was approaching the galaxy, just as Admiral Wright had warned. The time for secrets was over. The time for survival was beginning. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Representatives from every major species sat in stunned silence as they watched the sensor feeds. The ancient fleet, now fully awakened, was a sight that defied their understanding of science. Dr. Blake stood before them again, but this time, no one was laughing. Behind her, the tactical displays showed the approaching threat, a massive void in space where stars simply disappeared. "The harvest fleet is coming," she said, her voice steady. "Just as my ancestors predicted. We have less than 70 hours to prepare." "How can we trust this?" asked one council member, his voice shaking. "Hours ago, we thought humans were barely space-capable. Now you tell us they once ruled the stars." Professor Reed stepped forward. "The evidence is right outside your windows. Every ship in that fleet is more advanced than our entire combined technology, and they're not even at full power yet." The council chamber's windows showed the transformed fleet. The ships now gleamed with living metal, their surfaces flowing like liquid silver. Energy patterns rippled across their hulls in hypnotic waves. "Ship I," Blake called out, "show them what we're facing." The chamber's holographic system activated, displaying images from the ancient war. Crystalline ships, each the size of a small moon, tearing through space. Worlds being stripped of all technology and life. Civilizations falling in hours. "They call themselves the Harvesters," Blake explained. "They sleep between galaxies, waking every 10,000 years to collect advanced technology and intelligent life. They use what they gather to improve themselves, then move on." "How did humanity stop them before?" someone asked. "We didn't," Blake replied. "We fought them to a standstill, buying time to hide this fleet. Our ancestors knew they would return, so they prepared. They hid their technology and erased their history, becoming primitive again by choice." Alarms suddenly blared through the chamber. The tactical displays showed new movement at the galaxy's edge. 3 Harvester scout ships detected, announced the fleet's eye. "Time to intercept, 20 minutes. Blake turned to the council. "We're out of time for debate. Either you help us coordinate the galaxy's defenses, or you evacuate everyone you can. The choice is yours." The council chamber erupted in activity. Species that had spent centuries competing with each other now worked together, organizing defensive positions and evacuation routes. Back aboard the command ship, Blake sat in the admiral's chair, now perfectly fitted to human form. The ship's systems merged with her mind through advanced interfaces, showing her the status of every vessel in the fleet. "Scout ships entering weapons range," the AI reported. "Show me," Blake ordered. The tactical display zoomed in on 3 crystalline vessels, each larger than any modern ship. They moved with impossible speed, their surfaces crackling with energy. "They're scanning us," Reed observed from his station, "looking for signs of advanced technology." "Let's show them what they're facing," Blake said. "All ships, battle formation Delta. Power up main weapons." The ancient fleet moved with perfect coordination. Ships that had been dormant for 10,000 years flowed into complex formations, their weapons charging with energy that made nearby space ripple. The first scout ship fired, a beam of pure destruction that could have vaporized a modern vessel. It struck the ancient fleet's shields and scattered harmlessly. "Return fire," Blake commanded. Multiple ships fired together, their weapons linking in ways that violated known physics. The blast caught the scout ship in a web of energy, crushing it into atoms. The other scouts turned to retreat, but the ancient fleet was faster. In seconds, all 3 scouts were destroyed, leaving only crystalline debris floating in space. "Alert," the AI announced. "Main harvester fleet accelerating. Estimated arrival, 48 hours. Blake looked at the tactical display, watching the approaching void that marked the enemy fleet. "Send word to all colonies and worlds in their path. Tell them what's coming. And send this message to the harvester fleet. You should have finished the job last time. Humanity remembers." The council members watched in awe as the ancient fleet began to move, its ships spreading out to protect the galaxy. The technology they had mocked hours ago was now their only hope for survival. "Professor," Blake said to Reed, "I hope those ships have a few more surprises for us. We're going to need them all." The next 48 hours changed everything. As the harvester fleet approached, more secrets of humanity's ancient past came to light. Deep within the command ship's archives, Dr. Blake and Professor Reed discovered the full story of humanity's first rise to power. "Play Historical Record 7, Blake commanded, and the ship's AI projected another hologram. The image showed Earth, but not as anyone knew it. Massive cities stretched across continents, ships flew between the stars, and humanity had spread across thousands of worlds. "When we first discovered the harvesters," the recorded voice explained, "we realized something terrible. They didn't just destroy civilizations, they erased them completely. No traces left behind. That's why we never found evidence of previous advanced species." Reed watched in amazement as the hologram showed the ancient human empire. "Your people chose to hide everything, to become primitive again." Blake nodded, studying another display. "They broke up the empire, hid the technology, and scattered humans across different worlds. Then they used advanced science to temporarily reduce our technological knowledge." "But why not just fight?" Reed asked. "Because they knew something we didn't," Blake replied. "Ship, show tactical analysis of harvester patterns." A new display appeared, showing the harvesters' movement through multiple galaxies. The pattern was clear. They adapted to whatever they faced, becoming stronger with each civilization they consumed. "If humanity had fought them directly," Blake explained, "they would have either destroyed us completely or absorbed our technology. Either way, we would have lost. Instead, our ancestors chose to hide their best weapons and knowledge, letting it evolve over 10,000 years. Alarms interrupted their discussion. Multiple harvester ships detected entering the defensive zone, the AI announced. Blake rushed to the command center. The main fleet had arrived. Hundreds of crystalline ships, each one massive enough to swallow a moon. They moved through space like a swarm of hungry predators. "All ships, battle positions," Blake ordered. "Show them what 10,000 years of evolution looks like." The ancient fleet moved into formation. What happened next amazed even the Galactic Council observers. The ships began to merge, combining into larger forms that defied understanding. Living metal flowed and reshaped itself, creating weapons platforms larger than planets. "By the stars," Reed whispered, "the individual ships were never meant to fight alone. They're all parts of a larger weapon." The harvester fleet attacked first, sending out waves of energy that could tear planets apart. But the ancient fleet was ready. Their combined shields absorbed the attack, using the energy to power their own weapons. That's why the ships looked so primitive, Blake realized. They were designed to absorb and adapt to any attack. For 10,000 years, they'd been learning, preparing for this moment. The battle that followed would be remembered for generations. The harvester fleet, unstoppable for millions of years, met an enemy that had spent 10,000 years preparing specifically for them. Ancient human technology, evolved far beyond its original design, proved more than a match for the cosmic predators. Every attack the harvesters launched was absorbed, analyzed, and countered. Every strategy they tried had already been studied and prepared for. In the command center, Blake accessed more of the ship's archives, understanding finally why humanity had chosen this path. They knew that direct confrontation would fail, she told Reed. So they chose to play a longer game. While the harvesters slept between galaxies, our fleet evolved. Every ship became a learning machine, studying and improving itself for 10 millennia. Through the viewport, they watched as another harvester ship fell to the ancient fleet's weapons. The crystalline ships, for the first time in their existence, were facing an enemy they couldn't adapt to fast enough. Your ancestors, Reed said quietly, sacrificed their empire, their technology, their very history, all to protect future civilizations they would never know. Blake nodded, watching as more of the harvester fleet retreated. They chose to become primitive, to be mocked and underestimated, because they knew it was the only way to win this fight. The Galactic Council representatives, watching from their ships, finally understood. The species they had dismissed as newcomers had been their hidden guardians all along, waiting patiently for the right moment to reveal their true power. The final battle lasted 3 days. The harvester fleet, for the first time in its ancient history, was forced to retreat. But humanity's ancient fleet didn't let them escape. Not this time. They'll just go back to sleep and return in another 10,000 years, Blake said, standing at the command center. We end this now. The transformed fleet, now a single massive weapons system, pursued the retreating harvesters to the edge of the galaxy. The crystalline ships tried to open their escape corridor into the void between galaxies, but the ancient human vessels were faster. All ships, execute final protocol, Blake commanded. Professor Reed watched in awe as the fleet unleashed its ultimate weapon, a technology that had been evolving and charging for 10 millennia. The human ships released waves of energy that warped space itself, trapping the harvester fleet in a temporal lock. Target locked, the AI announced, executing containment protocol. The energy web tightened around the harvester fleet. Their crystalline ships, unable to adapt quickly enough, began to crack and shatter. The void they had created to escape collapsed in on itself, crushing the remains of their fleet into nothingness. In the aftermath, the Galactic Council gathered again. This time, there was no mockery, no dismissal of human achievements. Instead, there was a new understanding and respect. The records are clear, Blake explained to the council. My ancestors knew that defeating the harvesters wasn't enough. They had to be destroyed completely, or they would always return stronger. But that kind of weapon would take thousands of years to develop and perfect. So they planned across millennia, Reed added. They built ships that could think, learn, and evolve. They hid them in plain sight, knowing everyone would underestimate primitive-looking technology. The council chamber's displays showed the ancient fleet returning to normal size, the ships separating back into individual vessels. But they were different now, their true form revealed, no longer hiding behind a primitive disguise. What happens now? Asked one of the council members. Will humans reclaim their empire? Blake smiled and shook her head. No, that's not what our ancestors wanted. She activated one final historical recording. Admiral Wright's hologram appeared again. If you're seeing this, it means the plan worked. The harvesters are destroyed, and the galaxy is safe. But remember why we chose to hide our power in the first place. True strength isn't about domination. It's about protection. We sacrificed our empire so that all species could have a chance to grow and develop in their own way. The council chamber fell silent as the message continued. This fleet now belongs to all species who choose to protect rather than conquer. Let it stand as a reminder that sometimes the greatest power lies in choosing not to use it. In the days that followed, humanity's true history was restored to the galactic records. The story of an empire that chose to step back from power, hiding its technology so that it could evolve into the perfect weapon against an ancient enemy. The fleet, no longer needed for its original purpose, was transformed again. Under Blake's guidance, most of the ships were converted into research vessels and exploration craft. Their advanced technology was shared freely with all species, but with a warning about the responsibility that came with it. Funny, Reed said to Blake as they watched the fleet being repurposed. A week ago, everyone laughed at these primitive ships. Now they're the most advanced vessels in known space. Blake nodded, looking at the ships that had protected the galaxy for 10,000 years. That was the point. The best place to hide something is where everyone can see it, but no one takes it seriously. As the sun set on another day in the galaxy, the ancient fleet, humanity's greatest achievement and sacrifice, began its new mission. No longer hidden, no longer alone, it became a symbol of what could be achieved when a civilization chose wisdom over pride, protection over power. The species that had once laughed at the ancient fleet now studied it with respect and admiration, learning not just about advanced technology, but about the kind of courage it takes to give up power for a greater purpose. After all, as humanity had proved, true strength isn't always about being the most powerful. Sometimes it's about being patient enough to wait 10,000 years to save everyone else.